Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I should really go back and look at the really old ones and see how I started these videos, because I feel it wasn't like this forever. It just wasn't. It's been a pretty good week. It's been a damn good week. Everything on Twitch has been going swimmingly as we go through Final Fantasy XI's 18th anniversary, and as we've been doing our Realm Reborn restart, even our crafting and gathering sessions, which are doing surprisingly well. Those of you on YouTube have been enjoying some of the new player content, and I've gotten a lot of thank you messages, and I'm glad that you've been enjoying it. And to top it all off, I woke up this morning in an Animal Crossing, had a goddamn blue rose on my island, so I'm ready to go. With that, we got a Q&A to get to, and then I've got to get back to farming Alexandrites for my Mythic in 11. We've got the Treasure Trove tomorrow, and I've got more Crafting Gathering parts coming out, plus the Tank Versus is in the works, and we've got plans for the next, 4 to 5 weeks of State of the Realms. Things are good right now. Hopefully everything's as good for you guys as it can be, given the time, and you can enjoy some of the content we'll have coming on the channel. With that, though, before we go any further, thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel over on Patreon through these times. And thank you to all, look at his names, it's like names, I don't know whose name is going right here, but we got, there's one there. It might even be done by now, maybe I just keep it going like that. And of course, thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja Cross on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni, who have gone above and beyond. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, asking questions, liking, doing all that good stuff that I thank you for every week. I'm grateful for it every week. With that, let's get into the Q&A, shall we? All right, question number 1. These muscles can handle it. That was Godbert doing a dungeon. No, it wasn't. Trust me. I was there. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. I was doing hi to you too, by the way. I even know who this is, and they know. I was doing Fractal for Roulette in the tank for whatever reason, had queued without his job crystal on, so he was tanking the whole thing as a gladiator. We managed to bear the added weight. There's the pun I was waiting for, because I know this person likes bear puns. But in the process, we discovered you can't equip soul crystals while in a dungeon because it counts as changing jobs. That is correct. You think they should fix this or not bother because it's such a random corner case? They could fix it, but realistically, I just want them to get rid of classes altogether. I'm still in that boat. I'm never going to not be in that boat. They're a relic, and they are tightly ingrained into the lore and to the gameplay systems. It would be a massive undertaking, and it's probably not even worth removing. But you know what? They said the same thing about redoing a Realm Reborn, and look what happened. And flying in a Realm Reborn. So, you know, anything can go now. At the very least, maybe they could change the coding, but there are potential abuse cases for this as well, so it's probably just too much of a random corner case for them to ever do anything about this, to be honest. So I wouldn't expect anything to change on that front. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, how's it going? See, that's how you say hello. It's going good, and I hope it's going well for you as well. You think they should make it so the ranged weapon skills on melee don't break combos? Yes. Yes, I do. I hardly ever use those skills because I'm usually in the middle of a combo. Yes. Yeah, that's it. Answer's done. Yes. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. Hope everything's going well. I plan on starting a playthrough of OG7 with the New Threat mod. Great choice. And I wanted to ask about something before going in. I've heard horror stories of some players who botched certain characters with their SP upgrades so badly they were almost useless. I wouldn't expect for you to know what they did, but could you think of anything that is so catastrophic where you would say, I could have swore that they added a way for you to reset those like way later in the game. Maybe there wasn't. I thought there was. It has been a while since I played New Threat. No, I can't imagine it would be that bad. You might... The only way you could actually screw up a character super, super bad is to literally pick a different SP increase every time and be so, well-rounded that you're just not as strong as all the other characters who you've gone very particular routes with. That's all I can really think of, to be honest, and I'm not even sure that would really screw a character out. It just would mean you'd have some characters who'd be more useful. And to be honest, once I had my favorite 3, that's all I ran with anyway. It just made different parts of the game where I had, I had no choice about which character to use. It really just changed that experience up. I don't think you'll have any issues. And I could have swore there was a way of resetting them, but maybe I'm just misremembering. But I think you'll be fine. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Thanks for answering the question from last week, Haps. Appreciate it. Glad that, glad you... I don't even remember what the question was. The story was cringe. Oh, it was the question that invoked the my muscles, the muscle story. Okay, anywho, question. Hall of the Novice, I feel, just isn't enough. I know they don't want to tell people to play the game a certain way, but that's just how the game works. Is there some way for us to request a certain amount of knowledge out of newer players? No, there's no way to do this. I mean, there is if you want to shed a bunch of subs, but essentially people either want to take the knowledge that's available to them, whether presented by the game or by the players, or they don't. I mean, it's a task to even get people to read the most basic of things. The only thing I want them to add to Hall of the Novice is something that forces you to learn what your limit break is and how it works. I think that's within reason to ask out of that. But for to do anything more advanced, no, they're not going to do it. They have an idea of how to play. We often don't have the same visions as the devs, and that's going to clash. They either do exactly what the best and top tier players say to do, which is probably even better than the devs themselves are playing, or the devs say to do something and it's not what the top players agree in, and then it produces this whole, division of people who learned how to play the game or just did what they were told. There's no real good way to do this. If a player does not seek to improve or pursue further knowledge about their job or about the content, you can't do anything to make them do that. That's true in the game and that's true in life. So there's really nothing else that they can do. They can add more things, but honestly, it won't change the quality of player that you're generally referring to, who, quite frankly, don't care. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, sir, hope you're still doing well. I can't read today, man. All right, to be fair, I get my words out of order all the time, but thank you, and I hope you're doing well also. You've been talking a lot about Grand Company overhauls lately, and I was wondering, would it be worth to add other Grand Companies to the game? Since the Realm Reborn, Ishgard, and Doma have joined the Alliance, I was wondering if they would add them as Grand Companies. So, here's the thing. There's really nothing against doing this. The Grand Company is such a binary feature in regards to how it actually works in the game that this would do very little. There are a couple of potential concerns. One of them is that even though Freelancer is forced in PvP now, it is tied to the original 3 Grand Companies at its base. So that could potentially be a problem. I'm sure that the way they've done that has not been in such a way that if they added new Grand Companies, it wouldn't matter, because you are still affiliated with one when you get in there. So I have a feeling that there's probably technical debt or coding issues with that. That's a very minor thing, though, in all honesty. It's PvP, sorry to say. That being said, I'm sure those kind of issues exist all over the place with the way that Grand Company features are designed. But that's not even the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is why. What would we gain? What would be the point of being present those? Maybe they add a new glam set for them that you can collect with seals, but that's it. There'd be no good reason for you to transfer your Grand Company over there, or to do your squadrons there. Like, there needs to be a gameplay reason as to why we would join newer Grand Companies. Also, they don't have Grand Companies, so we would need to, in lore, basically say, oh, well, the Alliance has these, so I guess we'll do it too. They don't have them. They're not like the original 3 city-states that developed these systems in place for adventurers. These are countries that are in the process of rebuilding and trying to even, form new trade routes or get over the damage of a 1,000-year war. And believe it or not, I feel like lore-wise, they probably don't really care about the idea of adventurers forming such a society for adventurers when they already have military sects in place that, they have control over. So I'm sure there's all sorts of lore reasons. I'm sure there's gameplay reasons. I'm sure there's deep down coding reasons why they wouldn't do this. But ultimately, there's just no point in doing it is really the biggest crux against it. All right, this one didn't have a hashtag, but I saw first time question as I was scrolling down, so you're lucky that I read these at least a little bit before I start actually answering them. Lolly ho to you, 2 haps. First time question, so as a bonus, I would love for a limited job Onion Knight. I don't know what you'd want it to do. Thinking about the future of 14 and the tech hardware we are about to have with the PS5 around the corner, do you think 14 will make a move to it like they have in the past? And the DirectX updates no longer being compatible with PS3. Oh, you did have the hashtag. It was just on the end, and I needed to click read more, so I didn't see it. Put those at the beginning. I think it will eventually have a PS5 version. They've commented on it such, like, obviously they've acknowledged that the PS5 is coming to exist, but that right now that's not like what their focus is on. They need to make sure that they are, producing the content for the game we're already playing and not worrying about putting it on another platform. And I can understand that answer, especially right now. Like, they're just not thinking about the PS5 version. They're trying to figure out how to get to work from home, get the next patch out, figure out how this affects their schedule. I mean, this is not just going to impact 5.3. Even if everything were to just magically go back to normal, you'd be looking at delays for everything down the line. And the realistic thing of it all is that it's most likely going to be delayed regardless of what the status is of everything going on in the world right now. So that's their primary focus, and I don't blame them for that, but I have no doubt it'll be on the PS5 eventually. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You're doing quite well? You're doing well then. Quite well. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on my Dragoon question last week. This week, I would like to know your thoughts on Puppet Master. It seems like we both would love for Puppet Master to get added to 14. Limited, full, don't care. It's even been brought up in like 2 or 3 Mondays. It's been brought up in more than that, trust me. In the last 2 or 3. Okay, yeah. See, I missed a word in there. How do you envision it being in 14? Do you think it would be like it would be in 11? Any specific job mechanics from other Final Fantasy titles? Anyway, thank you for your time. So there's one of 2 ways you do it. Limited job, likely to be very much like 11, collecting different parts, creating different loadouts, and needing to figure out which loadouts work the best for any given encounter, because no doubt that they'll not only do stuff like they do with Blue Mage, with the raid challenges and stuff, but also something along the lines of the Masked Carnival, but for Puppet Master equivalent. So that would be largely what we'd expect out of the limited job version. It's loyal to the original and is within reason to expect it to be that way, especially given their own comments that it was already potentially named as a future limited job. Okay, if it were to be in the full game, I'd imagine that the easiest way to do it would be to make the puppet the weapon, and that you are the master of it. So all your skills are naturally puppet-related skills, and your puppet is the core weapon. How you do that, whether you make it a tank, I always said, if they make Puppet Master a tank, just hold the puppet up like this. You play Super Smash Brothers with Peach when she uses the counterattack with Toad? Just do that with the puppet. I mean, it could work in any sense. It's kind of like how people have talked about how, Blue Mage, Red Mage are all able to do so many different things, but you could, of course, force them to label down into a role. Which role they would be, honestly, tank, I'll go with, but it doesn't really matter much to me. That's just how I would envision the weapon and the aesthetics working for it in Final Fantasy XIV. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. This is a very recent one, less than a day ago. Hey, Haps, hello. Hope you're doing well. Been watching for a while, but first time commenting. Well, thank you for coming by and asking a question for the show. I was happy to see you make a video about the hunt, as I feel a lot of people miss it or don't understand. As someone that's active in Ether Hunt's community and Discord, it's nice to see that plug. You were on one of my trains on stream one time, Cactuar, that always ends with Mudman. Yeah, Cactuar sometimes has other rules too in place. Personally enjoyed the hunt more than the community activity and made a lot of friends with in-game with this content, but I also understand it can be very divisive. Okay. Question for you, as someone who's been around since the beginning, what is your opinion on the state of A and S ranks now, especially compared to when it was released? I think that's a question that has no right answer. This is really just, as you've asked, an opinion question. And my opinion is I prefer the efficiency over the constant drama. So right now, if there ever is drama in the hunt, it's like somebody complaining that it's being pulled too fast or somebody breaking the order of the train. It's basically going against, after years and years, what has become an established system for the player base who primarily runs this content. Whereas back then, it was pretty much the wild, wild west. There was no structure. You pretty much just called A ranks as you saw them. And yeah, maybe a bunch of them would get called in sequence and it would kind of simulate a train, but it wasn't so structured. So you'd have people going to different A ranks, or you'd have people pulling early. And it feels like now, while that does still happen, we're not immune to it, I more often than not experience what is more civilized and more more cohesive experience now, because the communities have taken their time to form. People know each other's names. People know each other's habits. And yes, what that does mean is when you have communities and groups of friends, that yes, there are people who end up breaking off and forming their own communities or different outlook on how things should be done. And that clashes when you're trying to create kind of a general activity, or trying to take a general activity and make it something more, make it, like you've said, a community. So in regards to the efficiency of A and S ranks, I love it now. It's so much better than it has been in previous expansions and previous years. And in regards to drama, a lot less. It's there, but a lot less of it is public. Shout chat is almost meme territory, as opposed to fuck you, idiot, noob, slowbie kind of thing. It still happens, but not as much. So I much prefer the way it is now. I think it's had so much time to blossom that it's become what you've said as a community, and I hope that it continues to go in that path, regardless of what changes may come to the hunt in future expansions, because now with the double S rank, who knows what they're going to do next. Ah, another one without the hashtag. Ah, but it has a read more. Is the hashtag at the end? It is not. Okay, but I did see long-time viewer, first-time asker, so I'm glad I stopped. How's it going, Mr. Happy? It's going good. Got my blue rose. I'm just looking at it for good luck. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. I've been playing 14 for a number of years now and I've always been a tank main. Bounced through them many times as of late. Feel like I'm missing something from tanking since Shadowbringers has launched. Threat management and DPS stances made me wary of the changes at first. Tried to power through it so my static would still have a tank. I'm not really enjoying myself, and when I look at how the DPS classes play, I find myself wanting to play DPS for the first time since Heavensward. What I really want to know is, how do you feel about tanking as a whole right now? You think I may have dumbed down as do you think that I may have dumbed down? Did you mean to ask, do you think it may have dumbed down, like tanking is done? Because that makes more sense to me from a question standpoint. I like tanking now. I like that. Pretty much. So here's the thing. The actual enmity management and the DPS rotation, those are things that were very much in contention for years when it comes to tanking. I know the top 5% of tanks would like to act like everything was so fucking easy and that it was a joke and that everyone did it and it was not the case. Very few tanks relative to the number of people who play this game could actually get on a tank and get the job done in a way that wasn't divisive. Because you had tanks that sat in tank stance in dungeons. Okay, don't get me wrong, I see that and I go, oh, it's going to be a longer dungeon, but whatever, I don't care. I just want to get through the dungeon. I don't care if I lose a few minutes. You got other people that go off on a massive tank because they're like tank mains and it's like the most insulting thing they'd ever seen. And I'm like, yeah, I want the dude to get out of tank stance and go faster. It's like when I see a healer not DPS, I'm like, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those. But I'm not going to tell the guy off like, hey, fucking idiot, you throw a holy out or something. Oh my god, this fucking shithead. I don't do that. I just do it like a groan, like, it's going to be one of those. And I'm done. But there are people who are so vocal about it. You have those people to thank for the changes because that's why they exist, so that doesn't happen. Now tank stance is for enmity, is for managing your enmity, managing your aggro, and not having to do anything with your damage. There's no bouncing back and forth between them, so that doesn't happen. So players can hop on it and get the job done in a way that is not divisive to the duty finder in particular. So I like it for that reason. Yes, gameplay elements are, in general, because you don't have to manage as much, easier. It's literally about how well you can do your DPS rotation, how well you manage tank cooldowns, and anyone who's been doing that for years is likely going to have an easy time doing that. But there's still a mountain of players that are working their way up that skill ladder, and they'll enjoy it. So it's a matter of comparing where it is at the top to everyone who's climbing up to that point. And it's always going to lean towards the greater number of people, which is not at that like super top elite percentage. So for that, I gotta like the way it is now. And if I gotta say, I'm surprised you don't like Gunbreaker if that looks more interesting. I know Gunbreaker has its own frustrations with uptime and, boss fights and timings whenever you need to like walk away. It requires a little bit more thinking. But at the same time, I'm really surprised that you didn't end up liking that, because that really is the closest thing you're getting to kind of that DPS feel, which it seems like you're kind of yearning for right now. I'd also just say you could just be tired of doing it after all these years. And now that it's easier, you're even more tired of doing it. So you should hop on a DPS. Have a good time. Try Machinist. I like that one. All right, this one's 16 minutes ago. Holy moly. It's like this person knew I was about to start recording. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hashtag MHM. That's a new one. Hey, Haps. Hope things are going well for you as always. Thanks, and I hope the same for you as well. Quick questions on the races of 14. Why does it seem like Lalafels have more evil or simply less moral than the other races? Well, without diving too much into spoiler territory all the way back in A Realm Reborn, the most evil ones we were introduced to really quickly and were major antagonists to the story. And even when we found out that they weren't all the way evil, they were still really messed up. The main thing is the Syndicate in Ul'dah. It has many Lalafell members, and they are all terrible. All of them. Minus one. There's one that's okay. Little naive. But the other three, and now two, are way too evil. And they have tainted the image of every Lalafell in the game. There are others that suck as well. Those two in particular, really bad. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. How you doing? I'm doing all right. Good. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I have a question for Scholar. I'm not a great scholar, so let's see if I can even answer this adequately. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the job. Not much. Enough, probably. But in 5.0 changes, they change Eos and Selene to be interchangeable and remove the ability to control the basic spell Embrace. Since then, many bugs and issues have arisen, and many Scholar players I've spoken to are frustrated with how dumb the fairy can be. They're worried about that now? Listen, the fairy's never been a smart one. There's a lot more fairy actions now, though. So the time you encounter dumbness or delayedness or whatever the hell you want to call it, more frequent. The more commands you have to give to the thing that doesn't... Listen, pets in general in Final Fantasy XIV don't have a great rap, and that's for a pretty good reason. It's why my Puppet Master answer from earlier, I didn't say give them hand-to-hand weapons and make the puppet a pet. I said make the weapon a puppet because you forego any of that fuckery. That is the main reason why I said that. They might just be noticing now. That little fairy has always been super dumb. You're just seeing it more now. And on the flip side, one that's from very long ago, 5 days ago. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. First question ever from me. Haps, welcome. Thumbs up. I like it. Alpha UK from the Phoenix server here. My two RL buddies, Simon UK and Danny UK. I see you guys are very good buddies because you all share the same last name. that is best buds territory. Recently trioed Palace of the Dead up to 196. Taken out by a knight and a lack of items. We did this Paladin, Red Mage, looking to start Heaven on High. What do you think the best setup would be? Honestly, one Red Mage, replace it with a White Mage. You doesn't have to even be a White Mage. A Scholar or an Astro would be fine. If anything, a Scholar for shielding, probably preferred. Or an Astro in that case. But I like Scholar. Yeah, that's my go-to when I want shields, personally. Just replace one Red Mage with a healer. That way you have two different jobs that can res still, which is honestly a huge advantage of that. And you have just like a full dedicated healer. That, taken out by a knight, realistically shouldn't have been the thing that wiped you out in 196, even with this setup. But with a healer, you may not have wiped in the situation that you found yourself in. So I would definitely recommend tank, red mage, healer. It doesn't even have to be paladin, but if you want to stick to similar jobs, and you should be fine. I don't main healer, and I've healed through Palace and Heaven on High, so I think you'll be okay with people who have, with your friends. And hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hope you're doing well. Same back to you. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. So I have a bonus of an extra Thundercloud proc in your next run-through of A Realm Reborn. I'm going to need a lot more than one extra Thundercloud proc, but thank you all the same. I've been playing 14 since 2.0 launch, and I played a variety of different jobs, currently maining in the tank role. I've never played a healer, with the biggest reason being I play on a controller and always found healing on controller intimidating. That's a word for it. I've recently decided I want to give it a shot, and I remembered you did Healer Happy series on controller, so I was wondering if you could give me any advice. Well, that series will give you a lot of advice, because I struggled with it early on. As long as you're not healing in alliances, meaning trying to heal the alliance members that aren't your own, that sucks. That's the worst part of controller healing. Your actual party, it's about memorizing how many button presses it takes to move an action to the individual that you're trying to cast on, such as a heal. So for example, if someone's the first 4 on your list, down 1, 2, 3, or 4 times. If they're in positions 5 through 8, up 1, 2, 3, or 4 times. Instead of going from the top and pressing down 7 times to get to the bottom of the list. That is probably the #1 thing you're going to want to get used to. I'd also consider looking at macros for certain types of actions. One big one is potentially Asylum. I'm not a super big fan of making macros for healing related skills regardless of the context, but with Asylum in particular, you can make a target macro, or you can make a me macro. I would personally not recommend making that, where you can place it just at the target's location and it'll just form the circle without you needing to drop it on the ground, which to be honest on controller can be a little finicky because you have to like actually move the camera to move the thing all together. So just having it auto place on the target, knowing where you want it to go, and then targeting that person and then casting on them and then it'll just appear. That might be the route that you have to take, but you're going to feel that out. You'll either determine you do or don't want to do that, because it can also lead to problems if you misuse it, because once you've pressed it, it's going in the spot that you placed it. So those would be the 2 big things that I'd personally recommend. All right, I saw what looked to be, I saw it just came back to 14 after a lot of time. Shiva X, wow. So let me see if this is a question. Mr. Happy just came back to 14. Congrats on your channel. It was mandatory to watch your coil videos. Yeah, I wish I could go back and tell my past self to improve certain things about those. After a month of finally catching up with things like main scenario, alliance raids, pre-Shadowbringers raids, etc., I'm wondering, are the Shadowbringers raids the same as coil used to be. I don't understand that question. There's a lot of ways that can be interpreted. So I'm not really sure what you mean by that. There's again, like, so I'll tell you what's different. They're just one boss and done. There's no like actual instance for you to like run through. There's 2 difficulties, normal and savage, and normal is super easy. Savage is the actual raid difficulty. And and the loot system is different. And we get pages when we clear, so if you don't get loot after a certain number of weeks, you can just buy it. I guess I'm not really sure what the question is in that regard, because it's loaded. It's not specific enough. So we're doing 5.2 content, knowing that in 2, almost 3 months, next patch will hit and make my humble 280, 290 gear. Wait, what? 280, 290 is like Heaven's Word content. I think you need to restructure some of these questions a little bit, to be honest, because I think I'm at 480 and 490, and no, only even numbered patches increase item level. That's been the case since A Realm Reborn, since the days that you played, and odd numbered patches add catch-up gear. And what's the best thing you do with your obsolete spirit bonded gear you don't want to keep? Toss it. Get rid of it. I don't know. On that note, next one. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hope you're doing all right. Same back to you. First time asking, love your content. Thank you, and thank you for asking a question on this week's episode. I started playing 14 with a buddy around 3 months ago, someone who has historically liked alts and other MMOs. I enjoyed playing through most of the classes, so I'm getting them to 80 and gearing doing content. I'm starting to wonder about getting quick access to the right stat priorities at different tiers of stats, skill speed, etc. I know in other MMOs like WoW, they have websites like Icy Veins. Yep. I've seen some generic stat priorities from Googling. Yep. So I think the answer to your question is going to be, I think every question you're going to have in regards to this, fortunately, I have one solid answer. You are looking for a central resource for job and stat related questions and answers. And fortunately, The Balance is the name of a Discord group named after the Astro card of the same name that covers all of those things. And they will give you those stat priorities. There is also a website that covers stat priorities. I forgot which one it's called. And it just feeds the information from The Balance into it. So that's going to be the answer. The Balance Discord will cover all of that stuff for you. It has different categories and different channels and resources for all the different jobs. And it's going to have everything you need. So I think that is what you want to look. The Balance is the name of the Discord you're looking for. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good morning, Mr. Happy. How you doing? It's afternoon for me, but it'll be morning when you see this. So good morning to you as well. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. So please enjoy a bonus of a free haircut. Yo, look, just... That's what it looks like. Oh, that's what's being hidden under there. This monstrosity. Listen, when I actually like comb it back, it looks all right. But not when it's like that. But yeah, it's bad. It's bad. Well, right now it doesn't look too bad. Look at that. It just needs to be combed over and maybe not fling my glasses halfway across. Ugh. The room. We're gonna leave all that in. So wondering if you could give some tips on doing harder content as a DPS. As a healer main since 2.5, I've never struggled with doing harder content in terms of what I'm expected to do. You've had it way harder on healer than any DPS has ever had it. So here's what you do. You do all the mechanics that you're supposed to do as a DPS, and you don't have to worry about keeping other people alive through healing them. That's it. I will say, since you mentioned Dragoon, overwhelmed with focusing on rotations, positionals, uptime, it's a matter of practice. It's literally just you got to beat on a dummy until doing your rotation is second nature. Then you have to go into raids and try to apply that until it's second nature. And then it becomes about, how do I get uptime here without killing everybody? That'll be the final question you answer. And once you've covered that holy trifecta, you'll be done. And you will realize that your life is way easier as a DPS than it ever was as a healer. All right, I saw the word second question ever, so we're taking this one. Hey, how's it go? Oh my god, it's a giant chunk. Sorry if this question is asked a lot. I can't keep up with these videos. The question is purely in regards to playstyles, not stats, skill trees, and all that nonsense that was touched on in this video. Good to know I answered that in last week, because I don't even remember. What do you think about subject... Let me finish reading it. I mean, being able to split off into probably 1 or 2 different predetermined and independent playstyles of an existing job. I don't even think I need to read that. Okay. Seems like a point adding a full new job would be too much. Maybe adding sub-jobs could be a way to mitigate that. Adding 3 new abilities, changing that ability, removing this ability. Not saying these need to level jointly. They will if you want them to function the way that you're saying. They can't be. You can't have 3 different abilities and ask someone to level all the way from 1 to 80 again, or in the case of a future expansion 1.9, you can't do that. I'm just gonna say no to this in regards to what I think about it. The answer is no, because it's not accomplishing anything. It's not actually allowing somebody to express a different play style. Because no matter what, you have to change. Every job is built from the core up, from level 1 to level 80, to make something whole and complete, or at least to attempt to. You can't just cherry pick a couple of things and change it. You need to start from level 1 and build up to level 80 again. I guess we'll say from 30 to 80. From the second you unlock the job. To be fair, we'll start from 30 to 80, because I feel like some classes and jobs really don't feel like they have much of an identity before that point. So we'll go with that. You'd have to change so much, you might as well have just made another job. And there's no way of doing this in such a subtle way that you can call it something like sub-job. A pure machinery-based machinist versus a pure gunner. This is still the equivalent of a skill tree. But instead it's a skill choice, which is actually what World of Warcraft did eventually. Instead of having a tree, every few levels you'd pick like 1 of 3 skills. And that would be what you got for that level range. And then you could go back and change that, and that's how you determine that. I'd just say no. I mean, it doesn't make sense in the context of Final Fantasy XIV. And it is not really less work. Other than not needing to develop a new, unique gear set, it doesn't cause it to take less work to balance or maintain as, a new job would. And most people would honestly choose to have a new job altogether, because fulfilling a new player's sort of character fantasy for how their character performs, reacts, their favorite jobs is probably more important than choosing how much I use my gun versus how much I use my bioblaster, I suppose. Next, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. How you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? You said you doing alright. You doing alright. I have a question. I've asked a question before, a little bit back after 5.05 dropped, about how I lost all hope in the Party Finder. Was able to find a static this tier. We started a bit late. We made it to E6 and Rage in about 4 raid nights. Good. Nice. Congratulations. And best of luck in getting through the rest of it. I have another question for you, this time about crafting and gathering. Not my strong suit, but it is also fresh on my mind, so let's see. I finally decided to level them since I have a lot of free time due to a certain virus. Not sure how endgame crafting and gathering works, so I hope you can clear it up for me. My main question is, how do we, the players, know what mats will be used in the next raid tier's crafted armor? Is this information released before the patch drops, or is it more of just everything that seems important and hope you get the right stuff? My static isn't looking for world first, but I like to be prepared. There's a few general rules you follow. Have max of every currency that is relevant to endgame currently. Fate gemstones, whatever the last tombstone was. In this case, what ends up happening with new raid tiers is the capped tombstone becomes uncapped. So weeks and weeks before, you want to get that capped and then leave it there. And then also cap the current uncapped tombstone, because then you can convert 2,000 of those into 400 or 500 of what the new uncapped one is. You want max of that, because 99% of the time the mats come from tombstones. And now those are probably the 2 biggest things. You can also look at having as many scripts as possible. That's definitely another big step of it, whether it be the capped or uncapped scripts. But it's really just a matter of accruing currencies, making sure your gatherers are well enough geared that if another tier comes out, odds are you don't need to change too much. You can just add a few melds or change a few things. Maybe craft a piece or 2 that's new if there even is one, and then go and gather the new stuff yourself. And it's really that. Have capped tomes, have capped fate gemstones, have as much scripts as possible, and hope that covers as much as humanly possible. And people just follow that rule, and it generally works. Some people do keep stuff from the older tiers in hopes that it will come in handy. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but that's up to the individual. Some people just take that gamble and win, some take it and lose, and there's no real, I guess, better way to approach it. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy. No Mondays, just me. I'm the whole hashtag down. That works for me. Hope you are well. Hope you are well too. 2-part question. In your opinion, what is the hardest fight in the game? Oh man, looking back on old fights, it's tough to actually give a real opinion about this, because there's sometimes recency bias, and then there's sometimes there's rose tinted glasses for the way a certain mechanic worked. Dude, I remember back in the Thornton Extreme fight, people needed ground markers to figure out how to dodge the 3 dive bombs. I look at that now and I can just wing it. It's my perception on the mechanics has just changed so much in all this time. So, like, it's just on a totally different level. I think I'd say it's probably Ukob still. Ukob's kind of Snoozeville for the first, like, 10 minutes. But it being the longest encounter, it having a lot of instant death start over situations with twisters, dive bombs, all sorts of things that can go wrong. Even if some of the earlier phases are Snoozevilles, it is willing to put you in the ground and back at the beginning of the fight more frequently, it feels, than Uwu or the Epic of Alexander. One of my favorite fights, and a fight that I think that anyone who wants to really test their mettle before going into Ultimate should try, is Turn 8 Savage minimum item level. Even just take off a few more pieces after that. Turn 8 Savage is quite frankly one of my favorite encounters in the whole game, and it gets overlooked in discussions a lot. So one of those two I'm going to label it as. Secondly, lore-wise, who do you think is the strongest boss? I don't think they're... Probably Bahamut, to be honest, because I don't think... So here's the thing. Levels in an MMO do not determine the strength of the boss relative lore-wise to other enemies. It's literally just an RPG function to get you to another point, to add a sense of progression. Yeah, so, and you've actually said that, yeah. It has nothing to do with the actual level of the boss. That's a completely irrelevant factor. So it's honestly probably OG Bahamut, but I'm talking about, like, Bahamut, like, end of an era Bahamut, not the one that we fight. Probably that one, to be honest. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy, hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. Two questions. One, do you see any kind of adjustments that can be made to the older Beast Tribe quests, such as the Heavensward and the Realm Reborn Beast Tribes? Heavensward, I don't really think need them that much. They kind of fit in all the conventions that they need to. They could update the rewards to more match what, like, the kind of rewards we get from the Shadowbringers ones, but they couldn't be, like, max level. They just have to follow the same conventions. That doesn't really seem like it's worth doing. I will say, get rid of the allowances for a Realm Reborn, Heavensward, and Stormblood. There is no reason why the super old Beast Tribes still have that weekly allowance. There are so many Beast Tribes. Make the weekly allowance only for the most recent Beast Tribes. I don't even need the older Beast Tribes, and it still upsets me that it works that way. So that's the big one. That's the big change. Two, I know you primarily raid with a static, but would you ever consider raiding an entire tier using the Party Finder? I actually have done almost entire tiers in the Party Finder. Most of the time, I end up joining a group of friends to do the final boss of that tier because I want to get my week 1 loot. And that's especially because I plan on doing Ultimate. I can't afford to miss any weeks of loot leading up to the patch for Ultimate, because if you have really bad luck, there's a chance you can end up waiting very close to the end of that, especially if you're in the Party Finder of all things. So I Delta Escape. I had no static for Delta Escape, so I pugged 1, 2, and I had to pug 3 weekly, but I actually did 3 and 4 with a group of friends, even though I had pugged 2 Enrage on 3 before doing it with the friends. So 1, 2, and 3, I pugged for that. Sigma Escape, I did with a static. Obviously, Ukob, I got into very late, did that with a bunch of friends. Some of us had cleared, some of us had not cleared. I think it was 3 of us that hadn't cleared. 4 of us had only cleared once before when it first came out. And then Keo, who put the group together, I don't even want to know how many times he's cleared that fight. And then Sigma Escape, I did, Progon. I did early Progon. We actually got it done really quick. We got it done in, like, 2 or 3 days or something. Uwu, we did, hardcore prog. What's it called? Alpha Escape, we did hardcore prog. I don't think I've pugged since Delta Escape, realistically, because I didn't pug the first tier of Eden, did I? No, I did my first tier of Eden. I ended up joining a group, and I didn't mesh well with them. It just wasn't the right combination of people and personalities. That didn't work out. So I joined a group of friends to make sure I got my Titan first week, so I wouldn't miss out on gear for Ultimate. The Ultimate group, similar thing happened. Fortunately, found an amazing group for 5.2. Just for Prog, though, we weren't doing static every week clears. I raided with Tate, fellow content creator, as well as a bunch of, actually, fellow streamers and content creators. There's a lot of us in that group. And then 5.3, there is nothing, so I don't need to worry about that. 5.4, I still need to look for something. And then 5.5 will be when the next Ultimate is, so we'll see about that as well. The main reason I don't is because of fear of not having enough gear for the next Ultimate tier. I don't want to look at a group and be like, well, I won't actually have this piece. I don't mind doing it, but a lot of the times I just like to try and get things done in as reasonable amount of time as possible, because I need time to make videos, make guides, other games that I need to live stream that are coming out. There's always something else that's like on my mind during raiding. So getting through the tier as quickly as possible is always my main prerogative. And if it looks like it's going to stretch out over weeks, then odds are I'd rather just not raid at all until an opportunity presents itself, than go through that process and deal with all that. It's one of the big reasons why I've had trouble finding groups I really mesh with, because I'm very much a get in, get it done, get it over with, and have a good time, and then like do weekly clears one night a week, and then just be done. And then I can do whatever I want with my time other than that. And a lot of groups don't have that same desire. A lot of people like to get on extra nights or spend times with the static. It's like, I have a good time with the static, but I've just got so many other things that I'm usually thinking about or worrying about that it rarely ever meshes. So I would probably never consider doing an entire tier through the Party Finder, especially the last fight. I don't have the patience to do final fights in the Party Finder. God bless your soul if you do. I don't. It's just the bottom line. There's nothing wrong with it. I know people who do it all the time. I'm not one of them. I don't have the patience for it. So no, I've never considered doing that for the final fight of Rage. I'll do it for the first 3, but not for the 4th one. Alright, that's actually going to be the last question I take. I didn't intend on it, but I don't really have much in the way of answers for this. There's one about, like, the graphics getting better. I still don't even think 14 looks, quote, dated. I mean, then again, I also have 11 and WoW to look at for things that look dated, so I guess it's kind of hard to make that judgment. And it's about ray tracing. I don't fucking know. People just throw terms around. It either looks good or it doesn't. I don't care about any of the terminology. One about trust AoEing. That's never going to happen. Some comments about the tank. I don't even remember what I answered about the tanks moving last week, but I guess quick thing on that. If you're a tank and there's an AoE on you, you dodge it. Bottom line. If that means that a DPS is going to miss a positional, boo-hoo, especially in a dungeon. You know what I mean? They have to learn what the mobs do and how the mobs actually work and when that shit's gonna happen. 2, they have ways of dealing with that. They have an ability, all of them have an ability that makes it so they can ignore positionals for 10 seconds. It stacks up to 2 times, and then Monk is god tier with Riddle of Earth when they can actually proc it. And 3, you generally move out of an AoE and then back into the spot where the AoE just hit. You don't just move and stand there. So that's the answer to that question, because I saw 2 or 3 comments about that. Then there's a few comments here. There's one about melee healers. No. I'm a big no on melee healers, because you cannot have a healer that only functions in melee range. So they can't even... They'd be as much of a melee as, like, Red Mage. If you're willing to accept that, then yes, melee healer, where they have like 3 abilities they occasionally use in melee range. I can also tell you, if we're running double melee and the healer's a melee, that motherfucker's running out for mechanics. That motherfucker is not taking a melee spot as far as I'm concerned. What else? Was there anything else here that I felt like needed addressing? I'm not that like real quick at the end that I have anything for. I don't think there is. There's one about gear sharing, and it says Monk starts sharing with Dragoon, Ninja, now Samurai. That's only the accessories, and Ninja doesn't even share accessories with that. Samurai will get its own gear type? No, and honestly, it shouldn't. More likely to get more classes to share maiming and scouting? Maybe. I think that's a higher probability than Samurai getting its own. They kind of shot themselves in the foot with the way all that gear works anyway. Although it works for the different... what's it called? The different aesthetics for it. I think that's all the like questions I wanted to go back and just quickly look at and see if I had any sort of just anything. One's a prediction about 6.0 jobs. There's only 2 jobs that are somewhat reasonable to predict, but you know, I like to base predictions based on things that have evidence, and we only have evidence of a couple of things at this point: Geomancer and Beastmaster. And one of those has been listed as potential limited jobs, so, you know, who even knows if that'll actually be the route that they take. So there's all sorts of things and problems with that, but I think I've generally covered all the questions that I needed to cover, and even went back and then did a couple extra things here. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy, number 291. Jesus Christ. Thank you for asking all the questions. If you asked them below, if you got one, ask it in the comment section below as well. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And thank you again to our patrons and everyone tuning in, our patrons of darkness, Khuja Cross on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni as well. But thank you everyone for watching. I will see you all next week. Be safe, be healthy, be hygiene, and until then, take care.